everybody just like worked together and wasn't like threatened by anybody else's success, like the music industry could be great.
Yeah.
But it is not like that.
Hey everybody, this is Fang from Lords of the Trident, and today we have the first of maybe many of a series of interviews about DIY band business and all sorts of fun stuff. And with us, we've got the amazing, talented, lovely Miss Sarah Longfield.
Hey, what's up?
Right here. And Sarah, for the people who are not familiar with you and what you do, tell us about yourself, tell us about the music you play, all that sort of fun stuff.
Yeah, okay. So my name is Sarah Longfield, and I've been playing guitar for like, I don't know, like 15 years. And I also play like other instruments here and there, and I started doing YouTube when I was 14, and I started like a band and doing tour stuff when I was like 18, 19, and I've been kind of doing both since, so.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So as a person who does, you know, music full-time or almost full-time, can you tell like people who are out there in bands like what was going through your mind when you just decided, okay, I'm going to take the plunge, I'm going to do this like for real full-time? Like what was that like for you?
There was like no cognitive like process.
Okay.
I didn't intend on doing it full-time or even still doing it at this point, honestly. When I was a kid, like I wanted to go to college for art. I wanted to be like an art teacher, and then I like thought maybe I'll go to music school, and I got denied to like every college I wanted to go to ever. And I had like a YouTube channel, and I was like, well, I'll make some YouTube videos, and then I worked like every horrible job ever that like I don't even think I could get a job in Madison anymore because I've quit every single like business in the city.
Which one was the worst? Which one was the worst?
Probably CapTel. I know you know everybody that's worked at CapTel, so.
AKA Craptel, right?
Yeah, call centers. And then like 2015 kind of rolled around, 2015, 2016, and I had like been working with Rob Scallon, and he was giving me ideas, you know, on like how to build my YouTube channel up and some of the band stuff. Like we had done a couple tours at that point, and I was a line cook at the time, and I wanted to go to Chicago Open Air, and they couldn't find anybody to take my shift. I called like every place in the whole, like every branch or every like extra restaurant, and they had not a single person could take my shift. They're like, well, if you can't get your shift covered, you're fired. And I was like, okay, I quit.
Wow.
And then it was just like, well, now I'm freelance. So that was that.
That's amazing.
So.
Wow. So how did the thing with Rob come about? Was it just talking with him online, or what is it exactly?
He reached out to me in like, I want to say like 2014, and wanted me to do a guest solo for him. And so I did that, and then I did a little cameo in one of his videos, and then he called me up like a few months later with the Slayer videos, the Slayer Cannibal Corpse, like Cheryl videos. And I was like, I don't think I can do that. And he was like, can you try? And I was like, okay. And then I like sent it to him, and he's like, okay, just come down. We'll work on it down here. And then, yeah, we did, and that worked really well, and that really gave my YouTube channel like a boost, and that helped secure a few more finances and like settle everything a bit more consistently. And then, yeah, we just kind of kept working together here and there. And when I was in Chicago, you know, we'd meet up, and he's like the best with YouTube advice. Like he's like just coaching all these YouTubers, like do this, like you got to do this consistently, or like try this. So I didn't know that it was viable to like make a living doing that, and he does. So he was like, yeah, you can totally do it, which was kind of inspiring. So
that's really cool. So I told a few musician friends that I was going to sit down and talk to you, and you know, ask them, okay, what kind of questions should I ask? And there's one question that kept coming up. Yeah. And they said, okay, as someone who does music, you know, for a living, right, who depends on her music for an income. Yes. Do you find that it's taken any of like the joy out of making music? I mean, how is it different for you now than it was before you were depending on it as an income? I think for some people, they can do it and like completely be unaffected. Like their love for it stays the same, their relationship with it stays the same. But I think for me, it's like a little bit more complex than that. So I would say that it has kind of changed my relationship with making music and changed my love for it a little bit. And that's for like a variety of reasons. It isn't just because of YouTube, it isn't just because of touring, it's not because of like, not solely because of like, you know, getting on a label. It's like a combination of all of them.
when you're like freelancing, you have to be taking income from like a million different sources. I'm sure you know there's like a bunch of different things you have to do to get by. And you're not, we have this like weird dynamic that's happening where we have like single independent artists that are doing the work of like 50 people. You know what I mean? Because labels are becoming more and more irrelevant. There are some that are still, you know, thriving and doing really well, but they're adapting to like the super rapid changing music industry.
Sure.
And I think that increased, like, you know, you have to be your marketer and like you have to do PR and you have to handle all your emails and you have to be like so like organized and like on point with your logistics and on point with your budget, and you have to know exactly what you're doing all the time. Like being that person and trying to be a creative, which is like the opposite of that person. It's almost like having multiple personality disorder. Like you have to jump between being so many different people, and especially if you're a YouTube personality, because you have to like be like the most energetic, best version of yourself, you know what I mean? And that can be really hard if you've spent all day doing emails. You're like, I don't want to be this person right now. So I think for me, because I'm so heavily a creative and so not a business person, like I don't have the same love for it that I had. And I'm struggling with that now more than I was at the very beginning, but I know there's a lot of freelancers in a bunch of different arts that feel similarly, so.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sort of along the lines of what you were just talking about, with so much stuff to do, one of the other questions we had from people who are musicians is, you know, okay, a person who does this full time and has so many of these business things that they need to take care of, where do you find the time? A, where do you find the time to practice? And B, how has practice changed for you from like when you used to do it?
Right. I guess there's a few different things. So like when I used to practice, it was because I wanted to like spend time with my instrument, and I just like wanted to play it because I loved playing it. And now I don't really have the time to practice as I did when I was like in high school and stuff. So you kind of get your practice in like your work. Like my only practice is when I'm filming or when I'm touring or when I'm like writing an album because the label wants an album, you know what I mean? So it's like I don't sit down anymore and do that. And I don't want to say that to discourage anybody, because I think it's so incredible that one person can just go on the internet and like be like, I do this thing, and then just like make a living doing it. That's so incredible. And I think everyone should try it if that's what they want to do. But I think you have to find a balance and you have to find a focus, and that can kind of help, like, you know, ground you in it. Because I'm like currently trying to do that. I'm not there, so I don't have the answers. But I'm trying to like find my way back into, you know, why I started it.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, you know, I feel like you say you're not there, but I feel like everybody who's on this path never feels like they're where they want to be, right? It's always sort of, you know, it's always sort of flighty. It's sort of transient.
Yes, right. You'll have like a moment of like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do. Like, this was so sick. And then you'll wake up the next day and you're just like, still not good enough.
Everything sucks.
Yeah.
You know, it only had 27,000 views. Why not more?
Yep.
You know?
And you're like, this is just taking forever. And then you have like this crisis of like, I'm approaching 30, and like, ugh. You know, but.
Shh, don't say that too loud. Oh God. And the cat walks through the shot. Anyway.
I scared him.
So, you know, along the lines of, I guess, all of this, right? I've heard it said by many people that now is the worst time to be a professional musician.
Yes.
And also the best time to be a professional musician at the same time.
Yes.
So, like, I guess, A, what's your reaction to that? And B, what do you think makes it the worst or the best or both?
I definitely agree on both fronts. I think it is the best time to be a musician because you have all of the tools at your disposal. You can learn how to do anything on the internet. You can find out, you know, what programs you need, how to work those programs, how to bring whatever is in your head into like actual real life, no matter what that thing is. And I think that access to like knowledge is incredible. I'm like blown away that we have it. But I also think the fact that there now is no vetting process for anything, you know what I mean? There's so much media, like an insane amount of media, you know? As someone that creates media, I'm not condemning it, but there's so much of it, and we have to take it in all the time. And in like the social media and the apps and stuff that we've been given for consumption, I think, you know, we're looking for, you know, you need to be doing this now. You need to be like content creators. I mean, you know. Yeah. You have to put stuff out constantly. You can't take a break. You know, you're dead if you quit for 6 months. It's just not really a thing. And so I think it's really dark because it's so oversaturated and so much of it is accessible for free, just like the knowledge is accessible for free, that it's kind of devalued everything. And I think it's also changed how we experience live music. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping from like thing to thing, but there's so many aspects of it.
Yeah.
And I think because you can interact directly with the artist now, there's no wall between artist and fan, and there's almost no line between artist and fan because a lot of us are both of them now, which is really weird. So it's like, now that we see the process and it's all open and out there in front of us and we have access to talk to those artists and to just go on their social media and look at their YouTube videos, we see them more as like one of us and thus less desirable and less mysterious. Like people would go to shows because it was like this weird, interesting, like mysterious thing, you know, and you go for the community and your friends are there and you want to like soak up the culture of it, but all of that has been demystified and kind of devalued.
Yeah, the artists don't really have any mystique anymore when you can chat them and they'll just answer right back.
And I think the fan to artist ratio has like flip-flopped. Like we have a ton of artists and not very many people that are just exclusively consuming music.
Right.
Which is kind of cool because, you know, all these people that listened to music and loved it had the opportunity to then try it out. But again, once you know all about that and you've seen it and you can interact with it in 2 seconds, what value does it hold?
What do you think is better? Is it better to have the ability to interact with and talk with person to person an artist that you really like love to death, or do you think it was better when they, you know, they were untouchable, they had this weird mystique?
Okay, I'm biased here, so my answer might not count, but I think personally I would have preferred it, you know, with more distance just as an artist because it's so much to take in, you know what I mean? Like on top of the 50 people that I said you already have to be to do this, you also are like a vulnerable human being working 24 hours a day, 365 days a year that like is pouring your soul into something and you're giving it to the entire universe. And you know, that like direct feedback is really hard. I mean, I've been doing it for so long, I don't struggle with it, but I know it's, like I have so many friends that are incredible musicians that are terrified to start YouTube and terrified.
You're talking about like people anonymously or as known individuals just commenting and saying, oh, sucks, or blah, blah, blah.
Or like
that
reaching
kind of
out. Yeah, that is one example of it. Another example is I think my phone number just leaked on the internet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And thank you. Yeah. And so I've been getting a bunch of random texts, like just, you know, some of them are nice or some of them are super vulgar. I don't know if it's one person, I don't know if it's a ton of people, but you can't escape it. You can't like go and like be at a family gathering and not have like some aspect of it permeate that, and your family's all watching too, you know, they all see all of it, and that's a bit invasive. And you know, I've had people like my family's been stalked before, like oh my god. So it's like I think there needs to be a bigger separation.
In that case, absolutely. That's
I mean
weird.
we worked on it and I got all of their information, you know, pulled, but it's a thing that you don't think about when you're 19, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and like
absolutely.
You have random people from Canada calling your mom asking what your favorite color is. You're like, oh, okay.
Oh wow, that is
here we are.
Kind of the dark side of it, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think it's cool to be able to, you know, talk to, and I've had the opportunity to talk to tons of artists I love, but I don't think it's worth the trade-off because I know so many YouTubers and so many successful musicians that are genuinely damaged by the things that people say to them, and like it really bums me out. And I've even been affected by it, you know, like not a ton, but enough to like make me be like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
You know?
For everybody who's watching, we read all the comments. We do.
Yep.
You might think we don't, but we do.
Everybody does.
So stop being dicks on the internet. Seriously.
Yep.
So switching gears a little bit, right? You've played a lot of live shows. You've been touring a lot, you know, for years.
Yep.
What would you say is something that the average concert goer, the average fan, what is a very standard misconception that the average fan has about what it's like to be a touring artist, like life on the road?
I think the biggest thing is that the fan, which I think is still great that they sense there's like a separation, but I think they feel like the person that's on stage and the person that's watching the stage are very different. You know what I mean? I mean, I even feel that when I'm at a show. Like, I'll be like, oh man, that person's life must be like so crazy, you know? But then like, I've met all of those people, and like, I've kind of become a very small version of that. And and I think, you know, it's the same. Like, we're all people doing a thing, and they're probably getting paid like the equivalent of a McDonald's manager. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So it's like, it's not a glamorous thing. Like, a lot of us are sleeping in cars because we can't afford hotels after the show. Like, you know, I mean, I think every tour, like, we've slept in. We haven't even been able to rent a van because it's like, we'll just take one of our friends' minivans, or like, we'll take my 4Runner, you know, from like 2003 and just sleep in it, or, you know, camp out in between shows. So, I mean, but I think people are starting to see, because like the internet makes it all visible, that it's not a particularly glamorous thing. And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, because when people see that it's not quite, you know, again, it takes away the mystique and it takes away a bit of the value.
Yeah, you would go to a show and say like, well, why am I, you know, what's the value in like seeing this person who's living out of their car?
Right, exactly.
You know, when I can just listen to them on Spotify or whatever.
And that sounds terrible to say, but it is true. Like, when we see people that are living super glamorous lifestyles, like, we value them differently.
I've heard that a lot of YouTube stars and a lot of musicians have talked about the idea of instead of selling music, like selling a lifestyle.
Yes.
So they plan out like their Instagram photos, and they make sure that they're always, you know, creating like a brand around themselves.
You have to now. That's because people don't just want like a section of something, and this goes back to the internet allowing everything to be visible. Like, you can't, everything has been compartmentalized, so you need to really be the whole package, or you might not pull it off, you know? I mean, you used to be able to like just be a musician, and that was all you had to present, and people would like, you know, absorb the culture and the visual and the image based on that one thing, and that was good and fine and well. But now they want the music and the live show and the aesthetic and the Instagram and the YouTube, and like, you know, what you're doing, why you're doing, when you're doing, and that's, again, it's even more to take on, you know?
Yeah, if you saw, if like there was a Kiss nowadays and it had an Instagram and you saw them without makeup, like, you know, immediately, like what would they have? You know, when the Kiss gets rid of his makeup?
Yeah,
you know,
right.
So, okay. Going back to that question initially, so what do you think, so that's what you think, that like a misconception from a fan. What do you think what is a common misconception of a person like in a band who's maybe not necessarily touring, but who, you know, who's like playing maybe like one show a month with their local band, and like maybe they play a couple hours out? What's a common misconception you think they have about touring artists, like musician to musician, on those different levels?
I've found there's like a weird tension between like artists that don't really tour and artists that do, and I think, you know, they see it as kind of like, well, they just got gifted that tour, you know what I mean? Or like, you know, they just kind of fell into it, and it's like, you know, before our first tour, I think we had done like, God, it was something like 300 some shows, you know what I mean? And we'd only been active for a couple years, so we were playing twice a week, if not more, all over the state to nobody.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, you know the struggle. Like, you've been doing the music thing forever. Not that you guys don't, but I'm sure way back when.
Oh yeah, you know, there were plenty of times, and there still are plenty of times when we play to almost nobody.
Dude, yeah.
So
we've all been there. So like, you know, if you're doing that and you're in it and you're kind of bummed out about it because you guys haven't toured yet, like, you're close. It doesn't feel like it, but you're close, and doing it isn't that much different. You're just doing the same thing all over the place. So, you know, I think there shouldn't be any weird tension between, you know, bands that are just doing local regional stuff and touring bands, because they're like this. They should be kissing.
Sure. You. So was there a misconception? So you said, you know, you'd played all these shows before you went on tour. Was there a misconception that you yourself had?
Yeah.
Before you did your first tour, that you thought what touring life was going to be, and what was it?
Well, I think I was younger, and the internet was a little bit less of a thing, so I didn't see into the touring world.
Yeah.
As much, and I kind of had the idea that, like, you know, it was glamorous, and these people, you know, had a whole team of people working with them. They didn't like self-book, you know, and then I got into it and I was like, whoa. Whoa. But it was good. It was incredibly difficult for our first big one we did was 6.5 weeks, and it was like,
wow.
every small city in America, but
first one we did was like 10 days, and that was exhausting. 6.5 weeks.
Yeah. I was like,
oh my God.
in it, and I was like, I hit so many walls. Like I broke through this wall, and I broke through this wall, and then like I think 6 weeks into it, I was like, I can do anything. Like we had been sleeping like next to some railroad tracks for like days. I don't think I showered in a week. I was wearing Steve's pants. Yeah. Like I had no laundry. Like I was living off Rice Krispie treats, and I was like, I am impenetrable.
You hit nirvana.
Yeah.
And you were like, I am everything.
Yeah.
I am nothing.
Yeah. I was like, you can't hurt me. Nothing can hurt me. So
the world has taken away everything.
Yeah. So it's really good to do. Like touring is incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've definitely had a lot of really interesting, really crazy, really, you know, like hitting those walls experiences on tour. I think like touring, you know, reminds you of so much, like the value of having a shower, the value of a bed, and also like I think touring can bring out the worst in people, but it can also show you
the best
of
humanity, because you meet people that are just, for no reason at all, just exceptionally giving. They're like every city you meet or every city you go to, you meet someone that's like, come to my house, like live at my house if you have to. I've cooked you 3 meals. Yeah. Here's like some fresh made coffee. Like, do you need anything? I've had people like give me things. They're like, you look cold. Here's a sweatshirt. Or like, I bought you guys all new socks because I know what tour socks are like. It's like, and that can really, like, you know, when you're stuck on the internet doing YouTube stuff and getting kind of down about it, like you go out into the world and you meet these just incredibly nice people that are friendships you hold on to forever, and you're just like renewed, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Especially in dark times when you're homeless.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, there was a couple that put us up in the bowels of West Virginia.
Oh wow.
for like 2 full days while our horrible old van that we've since chucked off a cliff got fixed. But yeah, I mean, like, I'll totally remember those people for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
so.
No, it's like, it's an incredible thing. I mean, we've had similar stuff. Like, we had this one guy who just had no reason to do this, but he put up our whole touring package in a mansion.
Wow.
And for 4.5 days, and he made us like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and like we partied, and like we were all sleeping in every room of the house. They had a pool. It was like in the middle of nowhere.
See, there's your Instagram stories,
right?
Right?
Yeah, right.
Ah, the lifestyle.
Yeah. Look at me.
Look at me in a mansion.
Yeah. With 20 other people.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah. Okay, so if there's, you know, since we've all been to a bunch of shows, we've all played a bunch of shows, if there's one thing about the live show experience, be it the ticketing, the timing, the opening bands, anything, that you could just like wave a magic wand and instantly get rid of forever, what would it be?
That's no question. Merch cuts. I think merch cuts are the absolute, like, evil. Like, I've had people try to fight me on this. I've had famous people try to fight me on this. They're like, you just don't understand. I'm like, no. No. There is nothing just about, because I'm not going to lie about this. Like, we have been on massive tours. Like, on the Winter Sun tour, we were getting paid $100 a night. I'm not going to hide that. So it's like, you know, because, and we were told, like, you should be grateful you're not being asked to buy on to this tour. And I was like, okay, thanks. And then so we go on the tour, we do the thing, and like, you know, when you're only getting paid $100 a night and you're merch restricted, because people don't know that on a lot of big tours with big bands, like they'll restrict the smaller bands that are like, and so they say you can only sell this much merch. You're only allowed to sell like 2 or 3 designs sometimes. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And they tell you, like, oh, you have to inflate your prices to like $25 a shirt.
And then if your prices for your merch that you're only having 2 T-shirts up for sale are the same as Winter Sun, you know, who's gonna go and buy you? You know.
Why do you think they do that? I've never been able to understand that.
I don't know.
Because like the people, you know, we ran into this when we opened for Steel Panther, and I fought them on it like you did. And I'm like, look, who is coming out to see us?
Yep.
I'm sorry, but everybody's coming out to see Steel Panther. We're like the little dog and pony show at the beginning.
Yep.
They're not going to like look at our merch, look at your merch, and go like, well, theirs is cheaper, so I'm going to buy that one. You know, no, they came out to see you guys. So like, I haven't ever been able to articulate why they do that. What business sense that makes. I
think it's just like an archaic thing that, you know, someone started and other bands were like, oh yeah, that makes sense, you know what I mean? And then it carried forward, and merch cuts were the same. I think, you know, and the venue should not be taking a cut of the merch. The venue does not help sell the merch. If they do, then they deserve a cut. But if they're not selling the merch, and, you know, especially from opening bands, like, okay, if the headlining band is pulling in, you know, $80,000 to $100,000, you know what I mean, and the venue's hosting them and giving them the resources to do that, you know, maybe a negotiation is fair. But for a band getting paid $100 a night to merch cut them, and the merch cut could potentially be more than my guarantee. So I got in a couple screaming matches.
Probably will be more than your guarantee.
Yeah.
Probably.
And so I got in a couple screaming matches with some venues on that tour, and I was like, this is not just. And she's like, it's not a matter of just, it's a contract. I was like, your contract is bullshit and you should feel bad. And I basically ended up comparing them to Nazis, and then we got kicked out. Whatever, I don't care.
But you kept your merch money.
I did.
There you go.
Yep, I had to feed my guys. I was like, look, I have people to pay. Like, this is my responsibility. They're basically my children. Like, I have to pay them. We need to eat. We're not getting paid enough to even go to the show. How can you feel good about this in any way, shape, or form? And like, whatever. I don't care. I don't care if I never get to play those venues again. Like, if you're gonna do that to me, I don't want to do it.
Yeah,
so
that is super, super scummy.
Yeah, it really is. That's the one thing I hate about the industry. Like, it's so cutthroat, and people are so shisty. Like, in every facet of it, if someone can like get even like $10 out of you, they will. Like, everybody somewhere wants a cut from something, and they're all relying on the artist to provide that. You know what I mean? Like, it's so toxic. If everybody just like worked together and wasn't like threatened by anybody else's success, like, the music industry could be great.
Yeah.
But it is not like that.
So you've had a lot of interactions with fans, good and bad.
Yeah.
In online and in person.
Yep.
Is there one thing that you would want more fans to do for the bands that they enjoy? Be it, I mean, anything. Is there one thing that you could say, man, I wish fans did this more often for the people that they support?
I think, I mean, the only thing is, like, the industry is in kind of a dire place right now, and no one's really sure how to measure numbers. And because everything is streaming and everything is free, like, a lot of people don't take streaming numbers, you know, super seriously, or YouTube numbers super seriously, or Instagram numbers seriously for live show turnouts. I really think the best thing you can do is just buy people's merchandise, you know, buy people's physical goods while they're still here, because physical media may be obsolete at some point, as much as that saddens me to say. I think, you know, and I think a lot of bands are going to go down with it, because it's just not really viable for so many people, because we're not sure how to profit off of these like new medias, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the streaming numbers and stuff like that, you know, you could have a crap ton of streaming numbers, and that translates to $20.
Yeah.
You know, and for someone who's not on the road, you know, 360, you know, 60 days a year, we'll say, right? You get 4 days off. For somebody who's not on the road that long, I mean, that's probably okay, but for somebody who lives on the road, you know, $20 a month is not going to cut it. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess on the same lines of that, what's one piece of physical media that you sell on tour that, like, what's the best thing, the best seller for you?
The best thing that someone can buy. This is a double-edged sword, because the label, all my like physical media, like CDs and vinyl and stuff now, the label like gets a pretty big cut of. So I want to like promote that, because like the label doing well will in turn make me do well. But the biggest thing that I get a cut off of on tour is like just T-shirts. You know what I mean? Okay. T-shirts are generally the best in return. But like I said, if the label doesn't make any money, then
buy a T-shirt and a CD. There you go.
Yep. Anything helps, though. You know, really anything. You can't be picky in this current state that we're in.
Right. So, you know, going back to the touring and such like that, there's, you know, a lot of people who watch this series are bands that are you know, in the garage, or maybe they're playing once a month and they want to try to get to the next level. They want to up their game a little bit. You and I have seen a lot of bands and have and have opened for a lot of bands, and have had a lot of bands open for us.
Yes.
What would you say is one thing that you see a majority of, you know, say the I don't want to say smaller time bands, but bands that maybe are not, you know, touring or well known? What's one thing that you see them constantly doing wrong, and how would you change that?
So, you know, I don't really think there's anything you can do specifically wrong in a music career, but I think if you're looking to progress to, like, you know, touring, I think it can be important not to oversaturate your market when you're playing, because I know, like, when we were playing, you know, you're also kind of you're forcing the mystery away from it when you're playing somewhere twice a week for 2 years straight, you know what I mean? Or playing in the same city twice a week for 2 years straight. I think it is important to space out your shows, space out your local shows, so that when the shows are happening, you're getting the best draw that you can have. Because if you're looking to hire a booking agent, which should be your next step, like, booking agents are so important. It is so hard to self-book a tour. Like, before label, before manager, before anything, if you are looking to move forward, my thing would be get solid local shows, solid regional shows, a couple, like, weekend warriors, and then I would look into getting a booking agent, you know? And the best way to do that is just to reach out. You know, you can go on different websites, and you can reach out via email. Be short, don't, like, you know, some people will write just paragraphs, you know. No one has the time to deal with that. Just say, hey, we're this band, we do this, we draw this amount, here's some links, let me know. You know what I mean? That would be like, if I were to take the next step, and that's kind of like what we kind of just fell into it, because that seems to be just how everything happens. But
yeah, right.
That if I was thinking about it, that's probably what I would have done while I was playing hundreds of shows to no one.
Sure. How many emails did it take for you to, like, land the first booking agent? Was it a lot? Was it a little? Was it by luck? How did it happen?
We, like, totally lucked out. We got asked to do a tour with a small like prog rock band called Made Myriad. I think it was 2015, and the booking agent, like, he didn't have that many artists. He was kind of new. He had just, like, signed with this other company that he was working with, and so he was like, do you want to work together? And I was like, he's like, I just don't really have that many artists, and yeah, so we got in with him, and then once you get in with someone, you know, everything becomes easier.
Right.
Because you can say, like,
the connection goes to the next one, goes to the next one, goes to the next one.
Yep. And then he kind of, like, oddly enough, all my booking agents have, like, given up booking, like, after I've been working with them for a while. So, I mean, I don't wish their job on anyone, so I get it. You know what I mean?
They say, oh my God, Sarah Longfield, I'm done. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, I hate this. So I've had, like, 4 or 5 booking agents, and all of them have, like, a couple of years into it, been like, I'm not booking anyone ever again. So I didn't fire anybody, but, you know, once you've had someone, you can be like, I used to work with so-and-so at so-and-so company. I'm looking to work with someone else. And,
right. I've found it's easier to, you know, at least for, like, along the same lines, right? We got endorsed by SKB a little while back, and I found it's way easier to go up to somebody and be like, hey, we're an SKB artist, what do you got for drumsticks?
Yes.
Rather than like, hey, I'm a random guy, I like drumsticks a lot, you know, that kind of a thing.
Yep.
So, yeah.
I know, like, so many people that are holding out because they want to get the endorsement from Vic Firth. They don't want to take any smaller, and I'm like, no. Take what you can, take what you can get. You're small, find a small company that matches what you're doing, and hopefully you guys will either grow together or you'll be able to use that as a reference to move up. Like, you know, don't get too big for your britches, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so, you know, going back to one of my first questions, you know, thinking about when you decided to do music full-time, or maybe when it was just sort of foisted upon you, right?
I don't have a job. So.
There's a lot of bands out there that you know say, oh man, I'd love to, you know, I think I'm ready to take the plunge and just do this full time and just do it, you know. Quit my job, sell my house, burn down my, you know, what, I don't know, whatever they do.
Your entire existence.
Yeah, burn down my entire existence, live out of a van. I'm ready to do it. As somebody who's been there, what would you say is something that you would recommend people either do, think about, get in line, or something like that before they decide to burn down their house and live life on the road?
Savings account. Savings account. Okay, like, I cannot tell you how many musicians I've met, and I'm like, you know, we talk about, like, finances and budgeting, and I talk about my savings account, and they're like, I don't have a savings account. I'm like, what? You freelance and you don't have a savings account? Like, how are you going to get by on the month that you make nothing? Because, like, you're going to have months you make nothing. Like, $0, negative dollars. Like, you know, and, like, when I was about to start doing that, I made sure I had $4,000. And I worked the shittiest jobs to save up that $4,000. You know what I mean? It wasn't, like, gifted to me. My parents did not give me money or anything. You know, they're like, yeah, good luck. Have fun. So get to a point where you have enough money to live for a set amount of time that you would feel comfortable. Before I've made any big move in music, whether it was touring or moving out east or, like, whatever I decided to do, like, I wouldn't let myself do it until I had, like, enough of a cushion, because I can't have the stress of, like, I have no money in my bank account. How am I going to pay rent? Like I have
Right.
bills, like, you know what I mean? Insurance, like credit cards, like what am I going to do, you know? And then once you know and you budget really well, then you can figure out how much you have to make each day and like how much you need to save when you're done. And if you make a profit, what % of that profit is going to go into, you know, and if you can put it in a savings account that's going to have some kind of return, you know what I mean? Some kind of like you're putting your money in there and it's just making money on itself. Not much because the market is still shit, but like, you know, whatever you can get will help, you know.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of people out there that really think about the financials of
the most important thing. Like your finances will buy your freedom. That's rule number 1 of freelance. Like every month I put like as much money as I can. I don't even take a percentage. I'm just like the bare minimum to live, and then whatever I can into my savings account. Like I live in the shittiest apartment. I have like no nice things. I mean, you know, gear that people send you sometimes, but it's like I'll make sacrifices wherever I have to save that money. And I think that's the other thing. If you're used to living a certain lifestyle, be prepared to not
to give it up. To give it up.
Yep. You just want a shower, a roof over your head.
No more fancy beers.
Like I was living out of my practice space for like, oh my God, on and off for like 3 years because I was like, whatever, my practice space is like $200 a month and I can just shower at the gym and like crash with friends and like, you know, because when you're touring, like.
Sure. Yeah, who cares?
But
yeah.
It's not bougie.
So a lot of the stuff that we cover on these series and on this channel is like DIY band advice. What's one thing for your band, for your project, that you like proudly DIY?
Ooh, I try to DIY everything that I can because I'm an unapologetic control freak dictator.
Yeah.
But obviously that comes with the consequence of being cripplingly isolated when you're failing.
Right.
But I love designing. I've designed like all of our own t-shirts. I think I've had 1 or 2 other people that I'm just friends with submit a design here or there, but I love doing the graphic work. I've designned all my CD covers. Like,
oh, that's cool. That's super cool.
And the one thing that like nobody knows, even though they should know, because like it's not very good, is that like I mix and master everything that I do. So like I'll write and record every instrument and everything, and then I'll mix and master it, and then I'll make the art for it and the layout, and like, you know, from A to Z, I'm like, I want to do every single thing.
Are you still like mixing and mastering everything?
Yeah, right now. I mean, I know I shouldn't.
I mean, there's sort of like a rule of thumb where it's okay to mix, but you should let somebody else master it.
And that's what I was going to do, but we came to a time crunch with the whole label thing, and I was like, I guess I'm going to master it too. So that wasn't ideal. And I do have regrets with it, but I just love the process. Like, I almost love mixing and mastering, not together necessarily, mastering other people's stuff, mixing my own stuff, more than like the recording of any of it. I think it's so cool to see it come from like this horrible demo, like janky mess, to like something where you can hear all of the instruments. You're just like, oh.
It's almost sort of like a sculptor like banging away at clay, and you're like, oh, there's something in here. I know it's gonna come out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's like just wonderfully meditative. So even though I might be compromising quality a little bit to do it, for me, it's like the process is so worth it, and I'm growing as an artist, so it will get better probably. Or, you know, maybe I'll bring someone in to start mastering, but I love doing it, and I love that I can do it, you know?
Yeah, that's super cool. Is there part of the music business that you think most bands shouldn't DIY?
Probably the mixing and mastering. Do as I say, not as I do. I think it is, because everything is like, there's such a demand for super high quality music because everybody's pushing out super high quality music now. I think, you know, in order to have a fighting chance, you have to have a good sounding product. Not always. You can get away with like, you know, depending on the kind of genre of music that you play, but I think it's important to work with someone that specializes in it, unless you are a masochist and love the process. So.
And then finally, on the DIY questions, is there part of the music business that you don't DIY but you wish you could?
Ooh,
because for me, like, I hear you talking about, oh, you know, I make all of my own, you know, art and stuff like that. It's like, man, the one thing that I just absolutely cannot do is draw. You know, I can Photoshop the shit out of stuff.
Hey, that's a skill.
Well, but I can't, you know, I can see things in my head and I cannot manifest them, you know, into reality using my hands.
Right.
So like, you know, is there something like that for you where you're like, man, I wish I could do this because, but I can't?
This is a really weird thing, but I wish I could work on cars.
Really?
Yeah, I wish I had the skills to be on the road and run into auto issues and just fix it.
Wow.
And know how to fix it. You know what I mean?
So you're like, you break down the side road and you're, well, it's carburetor out there. Well, we're going to have to go down to AutoZone and get me a QD 400.
It terrifies me, like, in a very, very, like, deep way to be driving a vehicle that I'm living out of with the lives of, other people depending on, the success of the vehicle, maintaining as we go about the country for a month or however long. And I just, every day I'm like, please don't break. Please don't break. I can't afford if you break, and I don't know how to fix you, so I might get ripped off. And like, it would just ease my anxiety so much to just be able to do it myself. So.
Yeah, I feel that 100%.
Yep.
Before we had our last touring vehicle, or the one we've got right now.
Yeah.
The one before that was a 94 Ford E350 church van, and it had sat in a parking lot for like 10 years. And I kid you not, like every 200 miles or so, it would just blow something. And I had this sort of like, okay, one more, and it'll be fine.
Okay, yeah.
And it'll be fine for like 20,000 miles. One more fix, and it just never
was
happened.
Yep.
And I'm sure I sold it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that the person who bought it, they've been driving it with no problem for the next 20,000 miles.
Oh yeah, right. It was just like when you had it.
Right. But luckily, knock on drum. The vehicle we've got currently has been amazing, and it's actually mostly thanks to our friends at Phoenix Foreign Car Services here in Madison. I found out like randomly they were fans of ours, and
really,
I popped in because somebody said, "Oh, you should go there."
Yeah.
And I popped in, and the guy was like looking at me like, and I'm like,
and you're like, hello?
What can I? Are you in a band? Like, yeah. He's like, are you in Lords of the Trident? I'm like, yeah. He's like, are we working on the Trident-mobile? I'm like, oh my god,
You're like,
so
yay.
Yeah,
that's
so
good.
yeah, so they've been just absolutely fantastic, and
that's awesome.
Again, knock on drum, we haven't had any breakdowns since. But
that's so good.
My God, like the days that when I was talking to you about being stuck in West Virginia, that was due to the van breaking down.
Van.
And it got fixed in the middle of like a trailer park where I listened to country music playing for 8 hours while a guy with 2 teeth was like, well, I think you got about to wait. I'm like, I don't know what she's saying, but
Been there.
So, oof, man. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so you've talked about, and I think there's been a lot of talk online about now being, an era of like the new music industry.
Yes.
What would you define that as? What would you say separates the new industry from the old industry? Is there like one defining characteristic or something you could point to say, okay, this is clearly the difference?
I mean, I think there is so many things about it that are different. I think they are just like this, you know what I mean? The only crossover is that noises happen, like there's just nothing in between. I don't think it's anything like it was. I think the power dynamic is all over the place, labels power going like this, artist power going like this, artist power going like this, because fan power going like this. Like it's all so blended and so oversaturated and so, I think one thing that because I had a lot of people ask me about this, because I think a lot of people are scared. I honestly think the biggest thing is that we've kind of removed the culture from it. Like I said, I kind of touched on this earlier. Like when you would go to a show, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't alive, but the 70s, you would go and you would like meet friends and be there and be present and be interacting, and you would go for the atmosphere and the culture and the people that were like-minded, you know what I mean? Like-minded people meeting up at shows to talk about things that they feel passionately about while listening to music. Like it was just as much about the aesthetic and the socialization and the culture of it as it was about the sound. And you were getting it in this like all-encompassing thing, and this was what you did to live that music. And then if you wanted to try and experience it outside of the live show, you could buy records and CDs and get kind of a watered-down version of it and enjoy that on its own. But it was all here. It was all in one bubble. That was like music and the music industry. It was still horribly corrupt, but it was all here. And then now you have like it's all segmented, and there's no way to bring it together cohesively for like a large group of people. You have like, you listen to the music in this avenue, you watch the video in this avenue, you go to the show in this avenue, like, in terms of like aesthetic culture, I think it's very individualistic right now. You know, there isn't any driving like fashion for anything. It's all just all over the place because fashion's having a similar thing that music is having and art is having, and so it's so segmented. Like now we have like a culture of individualism, and that really deprives people of like the social aspect of it, and I think that really actually takes away from it. I know it shouldn't, because like we think we're making music and people are listening to it and that's it.
Yeah.
But it isn't. It isn't that. It's so much more than that, you know? And it's not there anymore. So
it's interesting you say that, because I think that a lot of, at least in more my genre of metal, I think a lot of the draw of the big festivals, you know, like people going out to those festivals is not necessarily the bands, but it's more like seeing the same people every year, connecting with those people, catching up.
Yes.
I mean, I know if I go to Prague Power like to like meet up with people and like say hi and hug them once a year.
Yep.
You know. So yeah, that's an interesting thing.
And I think festivals are like the one saving, you know, as much as people hate on like, you know, EDM fests or whatever kind of festival you're having, I think that's like the one remaining, you know, dingleberry on the shit that is like an old music scene, you know? That's all we have left of that. And I think that's why so many people go to festivals and why festivals can get away with charging so much money. And it's people want the immersive experience. And the internet has robbed us of that. And I think we should all be pissed. But, oh well.
Yeah. So I know earlier you said booking agent was really important. Are there any, you know, and you can say booking agent since you were maybe asked and answered, right? But are there any vestiges of the old industry, be it labels, managers, booking agents, tour managers, whatever, that you think are still very critically important in today's new music industry?
I think, you know, all of it still is. I think it's adapting, but I think it's still super important. I mean, TMs, again, bless their hearts, I would never want their job.
That means tour manager.
Yes. You're basically just like an underqualified parent to a bunch of adults with adult privileges, but children personalities, and that's a horrible thing. And you have to make sure that all of these adults, like, you know, don't die and don't get hit by a car and don't fall asleep and get left at the gas station or something. I mean, it's a horrible job. I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but I think we absolutely need TMs. A lot of bands don't have the money to pay for them, and I think, you know, we need sound people for sure. I think we even need labels to some extent. You know, I mean, the label I'm on does a really good job of you know, PR and like, you know, building an artist and like, you know, getting them out there in new and different ways that they couldn't do on their own. Because it's so much better when you have a whole team of people, you know. I mean, I don't think it's right for everyone. And obviously, you know, it's not perfect and the dream that you wish that, you know, everything was, because like everything, you know, black and white. There's two sides to it. There's ups and downs. You're sacrificing certain things to get other things, and so I do think all of those things are necessary. I think all of those things will stay. I just think the role of what they do is going to change, and I think like how they permeate the industry will change.
Gotcha. So, you know, we've said a lot of like good and bad things about the internet in general and how it's changed music. But I think, you know, you and I would both agree that nowadays, especially, the internet is incredibly crucial to not only what we do, but how we do it and how we learn.
Yes.
And, you know, there's a lot of kind of unspoken do's and don'ts about bands on the internet that I try to, you know, spell out and just kind of take away that sort of mystique. Is there a specific don't that you see a lot of bands, either big-time bands or small-time bands, doing? Any internet mistakes that you see bands making consistently?
Politics.
Oh!
Don't talk politics. I mean, I've done it. I do it. I'm an extremely passionate person, and it bleeds into every aspect of my life, and I enjoy, you know, putting the things I'm passionate about out there. I love connecting with people that, you know, are like-minded, and I love having discussions with people that are not. But that's not a good way to grow your career. That is not a career-building move. That is a very tumultuous thing to start. I think, you know, you need to recognize that your brand, it can be separate from you as a person, and you don't have to share everything. You don't have to give people everything. And I think I mean, like I said, do as I say, not as I do. I still
Oh, we've all made
that.
those mistakes, right?
Yeah, I still struggle with that because I love connecting with people, and that's part of why I do music, and I want to like let them know who I am completely. I am so transparent when I meet people at shows. I'm like, what do you want to know? What do you want to talk about? Like, I don't care if it's like your drug addiction. Like, I don't care. Like, I will talk about anything with anyone.
Yeah.
But like, if you're looking specifically to build your brand or your career, you need to focus on solely promoting those things. You know what I mean? It can be nice once in a while to reach out and you know, show people that you're human and that you're a person, but I think for most people trying to do the thing, separation, distance. Do not tie your name and your persona to a thing, unless you're building a fake persona that you want to use. I mean, you know, like Billie Eilish is an example. Like, you know, she has an aesthetic, she has a clothing line, she has like, you know, she's done a lot of interviews, like she has like a style, and it's an all-encompassing thing, and she can be all of those things, and you know, she's at a position where it's not going to compromise anything, but still she doesn't bring up politics. Yeah. Lesson number one.
I think the only time I've seen bands successfully do that is when they have established themselves.
Yes.
You know, for like really, really heavily established themselves, and they have like a career, and they've been able to sell at stadiums, and they know they're going to keep selling out stadiums until they croak.
But even that, it's still risky. It's still super risky. Like, you know, you say one thing that you know, can be, you know, even if you're having a bad day, you say a thing, you didn't necessarily mean it, but it's not a good thing that you would have said, your career is done. Like 100% done.
Yeah. And the internet is forever.
Yes. And it is. And it's hard to think about that because we don't, like, as a species, we just don't forethink. Right. It's not a thing we're good at. Like, our brains don't do that as effectively as they should. So it's hard to think about. But yeah, forever.
So you may have already answered this in you know, talking about it, but is there a specific, can you remember an instance of like an internet don't that you did and what you learned from that?
Oh my God, there's so many. I am like just a walking example of everything you can do wrong and still like somehow pull it off. You might get really upset with me about this, but I really did not like Deadpool. Like, I really did not like it. I just didn't like the movie. And I just posted a dumb status about how I didn't like it, and
Is that an internet don't? I didn't
it's an internet don't.
Really? You can't say you don't like Deadpool?
Okay. No.
Well, then I loved Deadpool. Deadpool was amazing.
Same.
And the sequel was fantastic.
Oh, no. I still have people come up to me at shows, and they're like, remember that one time you kind of shit on Deadpool on the internet? I'm
really?
Like, yeah.
People are still mad about that.
It was like a 1.5 day long thing. It was like... I mean, it gained a ton of fans. People were like, oh, she doesn't really like Deadpool? Oh, she's a guitar player? Cool. Like I made like $1,000 in sales that week alone, but then I also had tons of people that were like, I'm never going to your show again. You don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, whoa. Whoa. And that was the first
I didn't realize it was so divisive. That's crazy.
Wow, you'd be surprised. It was like thousands and thousands of comments, and like I had a couple people like sending just nasty death threats about it. It was pretty intense. It was an impressive week.
So I know we talked about maybe a little bit about this earlier, but in the olden days of, you know, in the 70s, 80s, right, in the old music industry, a band could go silent for 2-3 years.
Yes.
You know, and they could still make a viable living off of touring and just
their record sales alone. Yep.
And nowadays, it feels like everybody is trying to be a content creator. He said knowingly into the camera, but you know, like there's an expectation where if an artist goes silent for a year or 2 years, I assume that they're done and
forever.
Dead.
Yeah.
You know, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about, you know, the pressure to constantly make new stuff and constantly tell the world I exist? Yeah,
right. Honestly, like, that's like my biggest, like, if I had to pick one thing that, like, I could just change, it wouldn't even be the internet. It wouldn't be, you know, any of the things we've discussed so far. It's the burnout. Like, you can't, as one person doing 50 things 24/7, 365 for years and years and years on end, you can't keep going without hitting walls, you know what I mean? But unlike tour, like, those walls don't end. They just keep hitting, and they hit harder and harder and harder the bigger you get, and the more fans you have, and the more people that are following you, and the pressure mounts and mounts and mounts and mounts. And then when you get signed to a label, you have new pressures. When you have, like, you know, deals with advertising companies on Instagram, new pressures. Like, your emails start to get completely out of control because, you know, you're more visible, more present, more people want to work with you, more people want to talk to you, and the pressure just keeps mounting. I can't tell you how many YouTubers I know that like have a drinking problem, you know what I mean? Or like are completely depressed or like, you know, burn out and they are so scared that when they burn out, they're not gonna be able to come back, that in the next day they delete their video and they come back and they're like, hi guys, you know what I mean? There is no, we're so fast paced now because of the internet and we're so bombarded that if you're not in it, you know, constantly. Even when I go on tour, like if I don't make a video while I'm on tour, which is incredibly hard to do, it's so hard to make videos on tour, and I get back, like my follower count drops. My video views go back to like, no joke, like 20,000 when I'm starting out in the first week, and that's like insane for someone who's been doing YouTube for 10 years and has like, you know, hundreds of
hit videos.
Yeah,
and stuff like
right.
That.
Like, you know, to jump back to 20,000, you're like, oh my God, I'm like right back where I started again. And then, you know, you don't post a video for a month and you post again and people are like, oh my God, we thought you were dead. And you're like, oh no, like this expectation it's, you know.
It's crazy.
It is. And it's like, as a creative, it's like, none of us are mentally stable.
No.
Like, no, none of us, like, you don't make things when you're happy. Nobody that's happy makes stuff. Like, you have to be tortured and horribly just, you know, confused all the time about everything. It's not a personality type that lends itself well to extreme, unending, constant pressure from a million different sources. Like, you know, the label will be like, well, I want this thing by this day. And I'm like, yeah, you guys have 50 people that are delegated to each specific task. I am one human, and the label is a small facet of the thing that I do. And then I'll have like, you know, YouTube has to do this, and if I don't make these videos, my patron count goes down. You know, so I'm just like, ah! You need to have a team. All the people that really, really pull it off at a high level eventually hire other people to help.
Team, right.
Yep.
So, you know, for somebody who doesn't have a team, and for the people out there who are trying to make this work for them and who don't have a team, is there a tool or maybe a site or something that you've come across that you like love and has saved your butt, and something that you would love to share with people who are, you know, maybe musicians making content or any of the things that we've been talking about? You know, something that maybe people don't know about.
I wouldn't say there's like a specific tool. I mean, they exist. So if you dig, you will find them. They exist. I am like, I've tried everything. I've tried writing notes in the bathroom. I have tried putting up multiple whiteboards. I've tried setting alarms. I have tried like writing things on my arms. Like I have tried everything you can think of to remember everything and to keep everything under control. And the only thing that works for me, because I can't afford to hire a team, like I said, I make comparable to a McDonald's manager, like if even. And then, you know, I just end up bringing in a friend. I'm like, Derek, can you answer my emails right now? I just can't do it. Or like, please help me shoot. I will like try to do something in return for you. I don't know what, but it varies depending on the person. So, you know, I think you kind of just have to have some kind of support system, even if they're not helping you with the work. At least someone to be like, I can't do this. You know, you gotta have some kind of support with it.
Gotcha.
Yep.
I know we talked about touring in general,
Yes.
and what the best thing to sell on tour is. Currently, you know, digital sales, streaming, all the digital realm versus physical sales, shirts, CDs, vinyl, whatever. What's helping you keep the lights on more at the moment?
I mean, just Patreon.
Patreon.
I mean, I love, like, you know, I do make money on tour. I make decent money on tour. I mean, most of the time there are some tours where I'm like, oh my God. But, you know, all these things help in small increments and help bump up the savings account. But my bread and butter is Patreon right now, you know, and even that is not very much, but it is enough to get my horrible, shitty rent paid for my horrible, shitty apartment. You know what I mean? And like, just the knowledge that, okay, if I make a couple videos, I can pay my rent and like, you know, put a little bit of money away and then just like focus on ways to keep building revenue streams. So I think
you'd say like the new way of crowdfunding and crowdsourcing is what's essentially kind of keeping you alive at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I do get really good advertising offers from companies for YouTube videos sometimes. That can be a lifesaver on like months where I have to like save up for tour, you know, or save up for expenses that come up here and there. But my number one, like, this is what makes this the most viable for me, is knowing that every month I'm going to get this amount of money. Or something close to that.
Yep. Hey, Sarah, what's your Patreon account? Look into that camera and say.
It's just my name. It's Sarah Longfield. Patreon.com/Sarah Longfield.
And our Patreon account is patreon.com/SwordsOfTheTrident, but you probably already knew that. And for the people watching on YouTube who are not on either of our Patreons, we're going to be posting the entire unedited video. Well, slightly edited. There's a few times where I got up to, you know, change cameras or whatever. But the slightly edited version, you're going to get the whole shebang if you sign up at any amount for me, and probably any amount for you. Yeah.
Anything else.
Anything, $1. You'll get the entire interview of us blabbing for, I don't know, an hour.
Yeah, something.
And you'll get all of the knowledge. So go to patreon.com/Sarah Longfield or patreon.com/RoadToTheTrident, or heck, why don't you go to both? $2,
do the
right?
thing.
And jump on today. All right, so finally, any other tips or tricks? Anything that we haven't covered here that you would want to share to all of like the musicians specifically watching?
I guess the only thing that I run into when I'm on the road and I meet a bunch of musicians all over the place is like so many of them are scared. So I think like don't be scared. Like there are so many scary things, but like that should not stop you. You know what I mean? I think I have so many friends that are like, well, I'll get this and then I'll do this and then I'll do this and then I'll start it. Or like they have this like plan where like they need to have a perfect studio or have to have the right equipment or have to have a good camera. It's like, nope, just do it. Just start doing the thing. And then you'll know whether it's a thing you want to continue doing like seriously or not, you know? That's the biggest, I think, inhibitor.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Tell everybody where we can find you online, what your next tour date is, what's going on in the Sarah Longfield world.
So all of my handles all over the internet are just Sarah Longfield. That's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. You can even just / Sarah Longfield on any of the most popular websites. You'll find my thing. And then I do have a tour coming up all of May. I'm touring the U.S. with Felix Martin.
Cool.
For anybody that's known me for a while and has been following, I toured with him like 3 or 4 years ago, and that was great. So hopefully we'll see you guys out there again. And then in June and July, we're going to be doing a little bit of Europe and a UK Tech Fest, a little UK tour too. So
very cool.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and good luck on the road.
Yeah, thanks.